So this is the heart of the fraud machinery. And we can see this across the entire world where we have two lines on there. One of them is major central bank assets, and the other is the total value of the stock in the bond markets. And the total value of the stock in the bond markets are the things that make the value of the top 1% go up because they mostly are holding on to those same financial assets, right? So the deficit spending, though, has to be paid back by the many, right? We pay for it in two ways. Inflation hurts everybody, hurting a lot of people right now. If you've seen your grocery spending, it's horrifying, right? If you've seen spending on rent, it's horrifying. Insurance, horrifying. So the deficit spending leads to inflation, which steals from the many. And as well, they pump this money into the markets. You can see that there in this chart right here. And you can see the tight correlation between central bank printing and the value of financial assets going up. And those financial assets are mostly owned by the top 1%. In fact, even the top 0.1%. So that's been the system for a very long time. Woo, that's the system. It just goes round and round and round and round. And everybody's pretending as if it's going to go on forever. But it's not going to go on forever because it can't go on forever. Full stop. That's just how it is. So what happens? Well, now we have to talk about how this breaks. It either breaks through a process of inflation or deflation. That's always been the thing. Let me start with deflation, why I think that's not going to be the case. Deflation is we say, look, we have $100 trillion of debt in the U.S. We're way over leveraged. We don't really have a justification for that amount of debt. We're going to have less of that debt. So less deficit spending by the federal government, less debt accumulation by households. So that means what is debt? Well, debt is future consumption taken today, no more of that. If we had a pay-as-you-go federal government, all of a sudden, massive amounts of probably 6-7% of the GDP just goes in. That comes right off the top, goes into recession right away. But then it would have spill-on effects. We'd probably get a 10-15% downdraft on that. And if everybody started living within their means and paying down the prior debts, so that's another drag on current consumption, so that we could get the debts to go down again to some more reasonable level, that would be very punishing. That would be experienced by most people as kind of a Great Depression moment. And we would have vast destruction across our most protected industries, the too big to fail, our protected class, our big banks. Who could live without big banks? Oh, can you imagine a world without big banks? Well, no, we can't, because the big banks are the financiers for the wars that keep the three-letter agencies happy and all the defense contractors happy. There's a whole system arranged around this idea of creating money out of nothing so that we can do the fun things we want to do, so that people can have their jobs. Remember, never expect a man to understand something if his job requires him not to, right? So a lot of people's jobs depend on this little system of fraud circling around and around and around. Now, this is a game of musical chairs, and it only continues until something breaks. If it breaks by deflation, that's at least 50% unemployment, the way I look at it right now, maybe more. And it's very punishing, and it would take decades to dig out from under, and things would really suck. This would be Great Depression 2.0, all cap letters, very bad. Inflation is the way, of course, they're going to want that, because with inflation, everybody kind of pays. So all those people, those poor young people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, sitting on TikTok, talking about how they can't make it anymore. And, they're earning 100,000, but they're hand to mouth, and they can't even, if they're juggling, do I eat food this month or do I pay my rent? And all of that, they're the ones paying. Like inflation steals from the many, gives to the few. That's the system the Federal Reserve would really like to enshrine. So Jay Powell, Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, these were reverse Robin Hood thieves, stealing from generations and stealing from the poor to give to the rich. That's been the system. It's amoral, it's immoral, it's wrong, it's bad. But they are administrating a fraudulent money system. Fraudulent because money comes into creation without any work having been performed, no value being added, no products produced, nothing done. And that's the whole system of Wall Street. It produces nothing. It is a giant leech attached onto the productive engine of the country, and that productive engine is sputtering, and it's really in danger of collapsing here. And so whether it's inflation or deflation doesn't matter. The effect is the same. People get hurt. I wish it wasn't this way. All my work is trying to prevent people from getting hurt by this. I wish it wasn't this way, and it didn't have to be this way. Let me go further. It shouldn't be this way. It's unfair. Have you ever seen the cucumbers and grapes thing with the capuchin monkeys? If you haven't, I'll post it down below. You got to watch it. But it basically shows that for any social creature, and it doesn't matter if it's humans, primates, dogs, whatever the social creature, rats, macaws, doesn't matter, that you have a couple of things that are encoded in that really have to be there. And fairness and reciprocity is one pillar, and compassion and empathy is the other. Fairness is really important. The appearance, if not the reality of it, it's really, really important. And when we don't have that fairness, it begins to corrode things and things begin to break down. So now, when we read about things, about how the government, in its infinite wisdom, in California, they're exploring the idea of maybe giving illegal migrants no down payment, no income verification, mortgages so they can buy houses because they got to be part of the American dream. It's like, well, wait a minute. What about the people who already live here who are going to be paying for that? The taxpayers in California, like, what about them? Nah, it's unfair. It's going to break. This corrosion stuff is happening. It's pretty bad. So either way it goes, it's going to be pretty bad going forward. I think inflation, deflation doesn't matter from a standpoint of thinking about does life get better or worse? It gets harder. It varies a little under that scenario, which way we go in terms of the strategies you would take. But for me, the plan is the same. Doesn't matter which thing happens in the future. The plan has got to be the same. Become resilient. 8 forms of capital to worry about and build up. And when you do, if you build up all of these 8 forms of capital, you'll be more resilient. So financial capital, start there. Because if you don't have financial freedom, all the rest get a lot more difficult. And we saw in COVID, people were forced into taking the jab because it was kind of like, the mandate was your jab or your job. And a lot of people, that wasn't a decision they could make. They had to have their job, so they got the jab. And of course, for 8%, 5 to 8% of them, that was a very bad roll of the dice. And the roulette wheel came up, very bad for them. So financial capital, work on that. And that we spend a lot of time on economics and finance here at Peak Prosperity so that we can talk about how to achieve multiple income streams, protect what you have. Our Hippocratic Oath is first take no losses as much as possible, but you still have to play the game as much as possible because, hey, it's life and life goes on. We might be wrong. We're not confused, but still you have money to manage. So that would be a second part of this, managing your money in Peak Financial Investing. We got some advisors who can help you. And of course, if you are from the US, that's Kuiker Wealth Management. If you're from Canada, and just get a hold of me. I've already been sending people to somebody who's awesome up in Canada as well. So financial capital, love talking about it. But your living capital is really important. That's what Evie and I work on here at our farm. And as well, your material capital, build that up as well. Clearly, you need, a good deep pantry and a good basement full of things. Have your spare parts. Like if we get to this breakdown, where somehow the infinite, boneheads at the U.S. State Department get into a more kinetic war with Russia, as obviously the neocons have been wanting, or somehow they convince themselves, delude themselves that maybe we have to teach China a lesson to show them who's really boss, and we lose access to things, you're going to need material capital in your own deep pantry, buffer, storage, garage area kind of a situation because, the United States is not, in Europe, not self-dependent, reliant anymore. Self-reliant on things like chips and certain components and parts and fasteners. And the list is almost endless. So material capital, very important. Of course, all of that's meaningless if you don't have the knowledge capital. What do you know? Listen, I can watch stuff on YouTube and see how to do things, but until I actually do it with my hands, myself, it's not knowledge yet. It's just information. Knowledge is what happens when you learn something and then you apply it, and then that mastery is that knowledge overlay. And so that's the part. So I encourage everybody, especially people who are younger or people say, I don't have a lot of money. I don't know. What can I do? You can build up your knowledge capital. By the way, that's the only form of capital that travels with you anywhere you end up. So that's the thing. If you know how to do things, you will always be in high demand in any future scenario that comes forward. No matter what happens, there will be an economy. There's an economy in a supermax prison ongoing right now. Humans economize. We will always have an economy. And that means that what you can do is what you can bring value to other people, because that's something you are good at. And we're going to need all kinds of people are going to need the same things in the future that they need today, period. We may not need all of the jobs, those BS jobs I've been talking about. A lot of jobs can go away, and nobody will notice. And that's fine, right? Including maybe my own. Emotional capital, really important. Are you going to fall apart at the first sign of trouble? Are you able to keep a laser focus and moving even though they are busy attempting to demoralize you? The level of junk I have to wade through on Twitter, which I believe is increasingly designed, like that Alistair McAlpine guy I showed you. These are bots and trolls and people whose job it is, I don't know how they're compensated, but I assume they are in some meaningful way for them. They are compensated in some way to distract me, degrade my thinking, part of the cognitive warfare so that I no longer trust anybody. I'm here to be demoralized. That's the target. The target is my cognition and my sense of non-demoralization. And so that's the world we live in. So maintaining your emotional resilience is going to be really important. And can you stay motivated and focused even though the whole world is telling you it's useless, there's nothing you can do, you're powerless? So the emotional capital is a really important part of this story. Your social capital, going to be increasingly important. The people around you, your neighborhood. If the lights went out tonight and the internet went to zero, cyber attack, EMP, whatever, you're going to find out, I'm going to find out, we're going to wake up and discover we're exactly as strong or as weak as the people in our immediate surroundings and our ability to relate to each other. So social capital isn't how many people you know, it's how well you know the people. And increasingly I've decided, and Evie has decided, we're just having the conversation this morning, that we need to start reaching and meeting more people in our community here who share our values, who have a core sense of knowing right from wrong, good from evil, understanding that hard work and reality actually are the important things in this story. Talking about things, what we might do is less important than doing things. So our values, we're going to need to meet more of these people because that will make us stronger and will make them stronger. Your cultural capital, not much you can do about that. It's kind of where you live. That's a long, slow, very difficult to change thing. If you're in Oakland, California, it is what it is for your lifetime, and it's not going to change much. All that could happen is it could be exposed to be maybe less fun than you thought when things get a little tighter. So different cultures, different areas, different townships are going to do better than others. I actually feel pretty good about the one that we're in right now. I think we're going to do okay, relatively speaking. We'll see. And then time capital, of course. Hey, this is your one true authentic ride. The time capital, when you really start to think about how you're going to continue to use that remaining bank of time that you have, for me, increasing that comes down to doing everything I possibly can to live into the gifts that I've been given and to do the work that needs to be done in this world. That's the deal.